I know this is not right, but pew, pew. I don't think
You're doing
bottle
fireworks?
rockets really make any sounds like that. But pew,
Or like,
pew,
they got that whoosh, that swish sound.
yeah.
All right. All right. Happy 4th of July. That's what this is. Yes. This is the 4th of July episode. So JB's already putting out his fireworks. So today, in light of America's independence, we're going to talk about American authors.
Good.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I know a couple American authors:
Yeah.
Jamie
Do you?
Vandera and Carissa DeLay.
Oh, yes. I'm author Kirsten DeLay, and this is Jamie Videri. American author.
You talk about the old American
But we're
authors.
from the family of immigrants that allowed, this all to come to pass. So,
Yes. Where did you originate from? In
like my
Poland.
family,
Yeah.
well, that's a whole story in itself because supposedly my grandpa, his family is German. My grandmother always told us that she was Polish, but when I did my DNA, it didn't quite say that.
Uh,
And, and here's the thing: when I wrote my first book, I had suspicions because my grandma for years told me she was raised by her grandmother who was Polish and that her name was Baba. Okay. And so when I was writing my first book, I made the grandparents Polish. By doing so, I researched the language, and Baba means grandpa.
mm,
But when you look back at pictures of my grandma's family and stuff, there's a lot of like secrecy, a lot of like changing of last names, changing of birth certificates. So it wouldn't be surprising that they were not Polish, but that was the cover identity they gave. So I may or may not be Polish, but I do like a good kielbasa, as we, talked about previously.
yeah.
And then my real dad is from Greece, so like there's that part too. So what about you? Where are you from?
I'm a glass shattering banshee from Mars.
Okay,
I
so
don't know.
you're an alien, so that's fine.
Yes, I don't know. We did the DNA testing, but I don't even remember what it said. I'm like, my mom's like, you got to know this because what if you have this type of DNA and it could lead to you having bucktooth syndrome when you're 67 or something. I'm like, or I forget what it was. But like, you could end up having this. I'm like, well, if I have it, I'll know it when it happens. If I get dementia and I had markers that said I was going to get dementia, well, lo and behold, I got dementia. All right.
All
So
right,
let's get back to the Americans.
right? Okay, so we're kind of talking about a lot of the early American authors and kind of like the
Cool.
pre-colonial, into colonial, like establishment as far as those writers go. And a lot of times when I was researching this, I found a lot of the writers were more that English-speaking European who came over and were kind of giving personal perspective of what the colonial life was like, versus giving us like deep philosophy or anything like that.
Kind of
Um,
reminds me of Annie Zadok from one of our authors, Anne Loder McGee.
oh, and
She's
yeah,
written,
yeah,
early American fiction novel.
yeah, yeah. Um, so with that said, I did come up with a couple lists, of course, female and male writers from that time period. But before we start that, I don't know if you saw that. Did you see where I put authors of the DOL? Do you know what the
Yeah,
DOL is?
no, I thought it was Offers of the Doll, and you forgot the other L.
No.
Okay.
Declaration of Independence. It's actually an
Oh, that's
I.
DOI.
Yes.
Okay,
I
you
saw
did
that and I
that
was
to
like,
screw with me because you knew that's what I was thinking.
yeah, I did the lowercase, so it just looks like the little L. And I was like, oh, Jamie's not going to know what this is.
Exactly. I was like, what is the doll?
And I didn't, and I did not put the actual like information in there until just now, so you wouldn't have been able to figure out what that was.
I'm looking right at it. Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and it's it just went zoom right over
right
my
over your
head.
head. Yes, yeah. So those are the people who are technically credited as being kind of brought together to write the Declaration of Independence, but the majority of the writing was Thomas Jefferson, because he was a good author already. So but I didn't know this when I was researching that Congress deleted some of the rhetoric that Jefferson had put in there.
Wow.
Yeah, which a lot of people don't realize. Those men were dualists, so they believed in a creator, but they weren't considered Christians. Did
Yeah.
you know that? I learned that in
Yeah,
my
because
religion history class.
and I'm going to catch flack, but you go, I remember being in church was like, this is a Christian nation. We were not founded. You can get mad at me all you want.
Yeah.
Look at the Declaration. We were not founded on Christian principles.
Yeah,
We were
they were trying to escape that like rhetoric of this is the way one Christian nation, you know, under the crown.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
so but they believed in a god. It wasn't that it was a
yeah,
godless nation. It was not a godless nation being
no,
created. It was true, yeah. But
but they
the
believed in freedom of religion, freedom of
yeah, and if
speech.
you speech,
Yes,
yeah, like
freedom
the
of
speech to
speech.
text that you use.
Yeah, yep. I'll kill a man once. Yep. All right.
Mhm. Yeah, so that's very interesting because if you read the Declaration of Independence, it is very broad in how it kind of creates that whole mindset that of freedom. You know,
Yeah,
that
you mean the doll when you
the
read the
doll.
doll.
Yes, when you read the doll, yeah, it's very interesting how
I
it establishes that freedom.
I love this list you put together though.
Oh
Especially
yeah.
like I know you're going to go through the authors, like the first female authors. I'm reading a couple of these. I'm like, wow, never
Yeah.
even realized this.
Well, and I saved I put oh gosh, where did I put that one? I think I put it down here.
And you're thinking, I'm looking at some of these dates, like the 1600s, and I'm like, do you realize how hard it was to become an author
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
have because it's not like today with printing. I mean, it's had to be pretty difficult.
Yeah, and that's another thing that people don't realize that putting out a book overnight was not no easy task. And I put this in. I don't know if yours updated, but one of the things that is interesting is that newspapers back then, because it was so hard to like, because you know those little letters just sliding in, and like
Yep.
the process was so time consuming, and the hours people spent doing that. I'm sure, you know, I definitely like the ease of the way we do things now for sure. But the newspapers back in earlier times in the colonial period was usually simple format. Stories were like 2 pages, you know, 2 small sheets, and then later would expand to 4 sheets sometimes. Um, but that first section was typically like foreign. Everybody would know what was going on in the foreign news, like London papers, and followed by what was happening in the surrounding colonies. So that was very interesting to think of like newspapers back then. You know, I'm currently watching The Crown on Netflix since I've been to London. I'm like, oh, I must watch The Crown now. And so it's interesting to see because that was what people read. You know, that's they had to make it simple. They had to like that's how they got their news. That's how things were spread. But then like colonial people like John Smith and stuff sending stuff back to England to give even before America was established some of the feedback on what was happening in the colonies. So, but do you know the first American novel?
I do not. I know the first female author because you got it in the notes. I don't know the first novel.
The first novel was The Power of Symphony by William Hill Brown, and it was published in 1789. Could you imagine how long it took to publish a novel?
Okay, because I'm reading this with like Anne Bradstreet, and she was 1612 to 1672, but she was more of a poet. So we're
Right.
talking about a novel.
Novel. Yeah, the
Okay.
first novel. Yeah, like what we would classify as a novel.
And what year was this again?
Let's see. That one was like 1789.
Wow. And
Yeah.
you
So
think
almost
about,
15
like you
years
said,
after America.
sliding the words in to make 1 or 2 pages and then ink press that. How
Yeah.
difficult must it have been
Yeah.
to make
Yeah.
a book?
And binding them and making covers and the gluing process and doing that multiple times, you know?
Exactly.
Multiple times.
And to be remembered for that, because you're like, how many copies were out there? Because how
Oh,
many
yeah.
hours did it take to make one book, and how did the word spread? That's just
Yeah.
that's mind-boggling.
Yeah. Now, so if we're talking about firsts, let's talk about the first female to make a living as an author, which was very uncanny because I mean, with the struggles that women kind of or the barriers and the lines that were drawn for what women were allowed to do, it's very amazing that this person made their living off of being an author.
Can I take a guess from your list?
Yes. Yes.
And you're probably going to say no, she didn't know, but Harriet Beecher Stowe?
No.
Okay.
Hannah,
Yeah.
no,
Isn't
Hannah
that
Adams.
funny? Because how big Uncle Tom's Cabin is, But
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of these authors, they died destitute. They really didn't make money off their books, but now they're revered as like, some of our,
Classics.
yeah,
Yeah.
or classic authors.
Yeah. That was one thing that when we went to London, we went to like a bookstore in Oxshire in the Oxford area, and the old stuff that was in there, but like, and it was interesting. I had the time to be able to see a lot of the public domain version over there.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really cool. But yeah, and like my daughter got a couple of the public domain books because she wanted to read some of the classic works. So that was pretty cool.
Did you hit Diagon Alley?
We did not go to Diagon Alley. Actually didn't do a lot of Harry Potter stuff. We went to Oxford, of course, to Christ University there, Christ Church University. That's connected to Oxford. And we went through the dining hall. We got to the staircase where Harry, when Harry arrives, and they're all there, and he's talking to Malfoy and to,
Wow.
yeah. So we did all that in Oxford, and that was super cool. Oxford was probably my most favorite architecture. And then we had some really good Lebanese food there, but that little town was so cute and just, I just loved that. Of course, I've been to London before, but London, of course, has a lot of more, you get that ethereal royal feel when you're there in London because everything's kind of like centered to the crown. But when you go to Oxford and you see the education and the structures are different because of the time frame. What?
You know what this is?
What?
That's you flying from London back over to 4th of July so we could talk about American authors.
Yes.
But it was my fault because I mentioned Diagon Alley. So,
Yes.
all right. Who was the first female author who made a living? It's driving me nuts.
Hannah Adams. I thought I told you Hannah Adams.
No, you didn't tell me.
Oh, well, it's Hannah Adams. And she was born in 1755.
What did she write?
I actually
don't know.
I failed you. So failed you. She wrote a lot of stuff.
Okay, this is not right.
I don't know what her first work was. Go ahead.
You are like Miss Meticulous.
Yes.
Like you'll write our notes that you like to remind me that I read like 20 minutes before we have our podcasts. But every morning I hear bing, 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 because you're updating. So how could you miss this?
You know what though, Jamie? I was putting together these notes while I was in London. So I was doing these notes while I was trying to be on vacation. I was creating this episode for you.
Hey, and I bet you were like really happy because I'll tell the truth. We filmed 2 episodes today. So we filmed with a good friend of mine. And you're like, Jamie, it's kind of roll over. So I'm always putting those together. Jamie put these notes together. And I'm like, no, he did it.
That's funny.
I did work for our future one of resumes. I do got notes for that.
Nice. And we have an episode coming out next week that we have our guest Jeff Rivera on that you did handle those notes as well.
Yeah, that's what I was secretly talking about, and really I handled them.
Coming out next week.
He really
Yes.
So and he really wrote them, so I cannot lie.
So her first book was published, Hannah. Her first book was published in 1784.
Wow.
Under the title "An Alphabet Compendium of Various Sects." So basically, it later was recognized as a view of
SECTS or SEX.
SECTS.
Just making sure.
Sex. Yeah.
I thought the ABCs of sects. I just wanted to understand.
Yeah. So this is basically the subsequent editions were later called the View of Religious Options, which should be interesting to read. I should probably I think it seems like she was someone with a pretty strong opinion. So.
And she wasn't burnt at the stake. That's a miracle.
Right? I think that was one of the trivia questions on the way to London was my daughter asked how many people were actually burned at the stake in Salem. And it wasn't as high as I thought. But that's another topic. All right. So let's go over some of these. Let's go over some of the first female authors in America. We have Anne Bradstreet, which was 1612 to 1672 is when she was alive. And she was known for being published as a poet, like you had mentioned previously, and focused again on religion and personal, themes, which was kind of like the thing. A lot of stuff was more reflective back then because, Nobody was like writing an editorial on their Netflix show.
No, and I like I'm glad you put this in there, Phyllis Wheatley, because she was the first African American woman to publish a book of poetry in America.
Mhm.
And she was from 1753 to 1784. Gosh, she didn't live very long.
Mm-mm.
But that's a miracle in and of itself. Thinking of the
Yeah.
time and like
Well,
an
yeah, because
African American.
her poetry kind of explored like race and religion and patriotism, which was, you know, that time frame. I mean, that was, I can imagine how hard that would have been to put yourself out there like that.
Absolutely. And the first female who I thought would have made a living at this.
Yeah, Harriet Beecher Stowe.
Yes, so Uncle Tom's
The
Cabin.
famous, yeah.
The
Which,
famous song by the band Warrant. I mean, and the book too. So,
right. Yeah, and yeah, this was a role in shaping the public opinion about how slavery became one of the most, and this became one of the most influential works, like we said, in American history for fiction writing. So that's cool.
One of my wife's favorite authors, Louisa
Really?
May. Yes, she loves Little Women. So
Really?
she goes back and reads the classics quite a bit. My wife is a reading freak.
Nice.
She's trying to read at least 200 books this year.
Nice.
I think she's at like 80. She'll do it.
Great start.
She read like 170 last year. So that's why we never do anything. You want to go kayaking? No, I'm reading a book. You can read a book on the kayak. I think I got her talked into it for this weekend, though.
So yeah, that'd be interesting because she, like you said, she loves Little Women.
Yep.
For those who don't know,
Women too, because she's little. But go ahead.
So this is the classic that explores the lives and dreams of four sisters and has been widely read, of course, and adapted, and it's in the public domain and all that stuff. So that's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Now you're talking like me. Didn't we come up with the word a couple podcasts ago?
Kroll.
Yeah, Kroll. That's right.
Yeah, we came with Kroll. Harriet Jacobs. This is an author. This author is an autobiography, Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. And it was published in 1861, which recounts her experience as an enslaved woman. So these are things this is like a list of stuff I would probably like to read.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about some other. Now let's go to the second section, the male writers.
Yes, the male writers.
Yeah, because there were a lot more of them, obviously.
Yeah. Unfortunately, think about it's like all the creative writing that we probably have missed because of this BS male dominance.
I don't know. I feel like that's changing, though.
Well, finally, but think we could be listing other amazing female authors from that time period, if not for the grip that male society had in thinking we're dominants, which is utterly stupid.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. We probably have lost a lot of really potentially good things. Maybe there were diaries that even people have found of women that we may not even know about that have, great works in there. So, all right, you want to start with some of these men?
Okay, so Frederick Douglass. He was 1818 to 1895. Yes, I'm reading Chris's notes, and I don't have my glasses on. He was an I can't even. What is wrong with me today? I can't even say it. Abolitionist and writer, known for his powerful autobiographies, including Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave.
Mm-hmm.
Wait a minute. Was there a movie about this guy?
Frederick Douglass?
Yes.
I don't know. I'm not the movie buff. That's you and my husband.
Now I got to research this as you're reading the next one.
Okay, well, so the next one, of course, is Benjamin Franklin, known for his autobiography and his Poor Richard's Almanac that we still have, I mean, it's crazy. My grandparents used Poor Richard's Almanac quite often for their farm, for their crops and stuff. Whenever they would make a garden, they would follow Poor Richard's Almanac to know when to plant things, and it would change yearly, of course. Even though Benjamin Franklin wasn't alive and reproducing it, he had basically the algorithm to be able to keep regenerating for the new year, which is cool.
Yes, ADH kick and squirrel went by. I knew there was. Pathway from Slavery to Freedom. It was a TV movie in 2010. I've seen this. It
Oh,
was
okay.
interesting, but my brain is fried. I can't remember anything, but yes,
Okay.
knew it.
Okay.
All right.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't even know that because, like I said, I'm not a huge like knower of all movies. I watch movies, but I'm not a knower of all like connections like that.
I'm a knower usually of all dumb movies that I love. Your
Oh,
husband can
we've
relate
established
because
that.
we
Yes.
both love The Water Boy and Joe Dirt. I mean, classics. They should have won awards.
Wait a minute. I have a question. Are you an Office fan?
I haven't watched it, but I told you I met what's his name? It just slipped my mind. My best friend, he does a lot of my filming, Sean Daniel. He works with this guy who was on The Office.
Oh,
Anchorman. He was also an Anchorman.
yes. I know who you're. I can visually see his face.
Something.
Yeah.
All right. I'll do my searching again while you keep talking. Then I'll come back in.
Okay, so Washington Irving. This is he was famous for his short stories, including the Rip Van Winkle. We've heard of that, and the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Which Sleepy Hollow is and that's a good movie. Is the Sleepy Hollow stuff, and there was a series I think even called Sleepy Hollow. I love that whole like the headless horseman and stuff.
Yep, I did too. David Koechner. All right, had to spit that out there.
Random.
Yes.
Yes.
David
right.
Koechner.
Yes.
That's my Tourette.
We all know this person, the author of The Raven and The Telltale Heart.
Yep, Edgar Allan Poe.
Yes. Yes.
Why do I want to think that he was British, though? For some reason.
Well, I mean, essentially back in this time frame, a lot of people were coming from,
Yep.
the Great Britain area, and they're coming over to America, a lot of immigration. But Nathan Hawthorne, remembered for his novels, The Scarlet Letter. I love that book when I was in high school.
Yep. So did Diane. I never read it, but
yeah, it was a good one. And it was kind of like definitely ahead of its time, because you got to think there was this whole like thought process. Should this letter be put on her? It was almost like how dare it was kind of like backlashing the community to put the Scarlet Letter on her. So that was kind of cool.
Sit down, Waldo.
What?
I was thinking of the Van Halen. You know how my mind works. I was thinking of the Hot for Teacher, but that leads us to Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Ralph Waldo Emerson. I almost said Walter. Yeah. And he did a lot of even like lectures and essays too, aside from just his transcendentalist movement stuff that he did. But he was best known for a lot of his essays and lectures, kind of like that more educational side of stuff, that push for the Enlightenment type situation. Henry David Thoreau, notable for his Walden, which reflects a simple living in nature.
Don't remember that one, but I do remember reading Booker T. Washington. I don't remember what Up From Slavery was. I do, but I don't remember the book, but I do remember reading it in school.
Yeah. Yeah, he was really pretty well known for his
civil rights.
Yeah, his civil rights. Yeah. Walt Whitman, we've heard this one before. Celebrated his poetry collection, Leaves of Grass, which is it's pretty traditional, but like at the same time, the cover is one of those it's a collection of poetry by him that came out in 1855. So was that like about 75 years or so after America became a country? And it's considered one of the most important and influential works in American literature because it celebrates nature and its beauty, the human spirit, and interconnection of all living things, which again, these kind of writers I found very fascinating because they were ahead of their times before
Absolutely.
A lot of things were even the idea of connection of energies, things that I feel like, I don't know, it's cool to see people who didn't have influence from the TV set or mass media that were able to reflect what they were seeing in nature.
Yeah, and you know what? Side note: this is why I'm so connected to you too. I love your writing, like even talking about torsion energy and how everything's connected. And I think that's like we're so on the same wavelength when it comes to. I do believe. I mean, think about I'm breathing now, but literally, I feel like everything's connected. So across the universe, it's still all one thing. This is one body, and the skin cell on this hand is related to the skin cell on this face. So we're all connected. So I love reading about stuff like that. I don't know where I'm going with this, but there's
Well,
a squirrel.
yes, there's that squirrel. Speaking of connections and the world and the connect, did you see my post on Facebook about the randomness that happened at the Phantom of the Opera?
You mean with your friend from Jackson?
Well, so yeah, so it was
That
the
freaked me out.
coolest. Yeah, well, that was what was weird. So we're literally in London. We decide to go to the Phantom of the Opera on my daughter's birthday, and so which was amazing, by the way. The at His Majesty's Theater. I would anybody that goes in London, you got to go see the Phantom of the Opera. It was amazing. My husband didn't even fall asleep, so that's great. But you have your little 15-minute intermission, and that's where you go to the restroom. And we were on the Royal Circle, so there was one bathroom for that. There was one female bathroom for that section, and then of course the bottom second there's a bottom bathroom, and then there's another bathroom, but they don't let you go in that one until like a certain point. Then they allow you to go in there to kind of speed the process along. Well, anyways, we're standing in line, and we're probably like 20 people down the stairs. So we're in London. We're there on a specific night at a specific showing in a specific section, and we're in line, and we are about 20 people down, and about 3 people behind me. People were chit-chatting or whatever, and I was going to say, and look, because we were talking about the one bathroom, and I was going to say, how crazy can you imagine it was back in the day when people had their corsets and like the gowns they had to wear, how hard it would have been to go to the restroom during one of these plays during intermission or whatever. So for me, I was about to say that, and I turn around to speak to the people behind me because I knew one woman was speaking in English, like American English, and she looks at me, she goes, "Carissa DeLay?" And my one daughter was with me. I'm like, it took me a minute to figure out who this person was because I'm like, wait, who knows me? I'm in London. Like, what the heck? Yeah, it happened to be one of my clients from years ago that I did her hair when she was kind of in high school and stuff. So crazy to run into someone at the bathroom at the Phantom of the Opera in London, England.
I know this. That shows you the connectivity, and I got a story just like that, but it's totally different. So I got to tell it. So
Please share.
I used to work construction. We'd build bridges,
Mhm.
and I was working in Marietta, Ohio, and we had a safety inspector on the
Mhm.
job site. The guy was a complete pain in the butt. I liked him, but I cringed when he came around. So a couple years later, that job's done. I'm thankful. I'm on another job in Athens, Ohio, and I'm like, okay, I need a break. So me and my wife, we just go to Myrtle Beach. I'm free of work, of anyone thinking about it, and we go to this all-you-can-eat seafood buffet. Just picked it randomly. I'm getting me some stuff, and I heard Jamie, and the chills went up my spine because I knew it was Greg, and I'm like, and I turned around, I was like, Greg, and I was like, oh, this guy just ruined my freaking vacation. But not really, but we kind of talked for a few minutes. How you been? And I think I said something like, better now that you're not the safety coordinator on my job site.
Right?
And we laughed about it, but yes, sometimes it's a good thing running into people you haven't seen for a long time, like when you're in London, but not at Myrtle
Yeah.
Beach.
Yes. Yeah, that's funny. But anyways, all right. So this was a quick episode because it is Independence Day, and we don't want to keep you from your fireworks and your celebrations, but we just wanted to do an episode that was kind of devoted to American authors.
Innovated.
Yes. If you haven't realized, we do have a lot of tongue slurs.
That's my fault. I'm rubbing off on her.
Yes. But anyways, I wanted to do an episode that we can kind of shout out some of the female, because being a female author and being a person of color back then was not easy to write. It was not something to be able to do, but I wanted to celebrate some of those people and remember that the authors that kind of paved the way for the rest of us. And we truly appreciate what they did for writing and making things, easier in America for the potential for for us as authors. So
Yes,
thank
we
you.
thank you all.
Yes, thank
I'm
you.
very appreciative of it. So we've been highly influenced by a lot of authors over the years,
Mhm.
not just American authors, but it is 4th of July. So of course we're
Yes. So yes.
celebrating.
Yeah. Celebrating America. So with that, thank you for listening. And if you would like to find us on any of the social media or other ways to listen to us, you can go to alwaysrightpodcast.com. Click on any of those icons. You can watch us on YouTube or Spotify, or you can listen to us on Spotify and Apple Music. But if you also have a question or an episode idea that you'd like to hear, you can go to alwaysrightpodcast@gmail.com. Shoot us a little email and we will get back to you, or we'll take your advice and maybe add a new episode in the future. So, as always, I'm your host, Carissa DeLay, and
I am
this is.
Jamie Vendera, and as always right.
Thanks for listening.